Why did you drive like that, you fool? We might have been killed.
Worse than that, monsieur. We might have been caught.
Caught? By whom? Those men you spoke to?
They are not men, monsieur. They are dead bodies.
Dead?
Yes, monsieur. Zombies. The living dead.
Zombies, a dime a dozen. Slow zombies, fast zombies, weird zombies, zombies with superpowers, zombies with emotions, zombies who love eating brains. Zombies who love eating brains, and the rest of it. But where do they come from? And I don't mean where the zombie idea comes from either. That's easy to answer. It's the Haitians, everyone. You probably already knew that one from Trivia Night. But did you know why? It's the US being xenophobic. I'm not sure what you expected, really. It became popular to associate voodoo, cultural and religious practice, to cannibalism and Haitian primitivism. Some sources even point to the zombie legend from the Bantu and Kikongo tribes in the lower Congo River area. Then again, the modern concept of zombies isn't a straight path from the US xenophobic view of these cultures to your average modern brains enthusiast. But what sort of zombies did we see coming out in those early periods of zombie fiction? Well, take a glance around the history of zombies, and you'll find some other interesting interpretations of everyone's favorite undead. Just look at Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. Frankenstein's monster being the vengeful dead created by science.
It's alive! It's alive! It's alive!
Or what about everyone's favorite racist fiction author, H.P. Lovecraft? His short story, Cool Air, showcases a doctor who artificially prolongs his body's life, needing to be refrigerated else he disintegrates. Just some examples. Not exactly what we think of as our modern zombie, but at least they share all the usual fleshy, undead ideas. But hold on just a minute, because surely there's a missing link here. How did we get from zombies just being some reanimated dead people to our zombies that hunt down humans, infecting them to become one of us? As with most things, the answer, according to Deborah Christie's Better Off Dead, The Evolution of the Zombie as Post-Human, which is a great read by the way, check it out, is social commentary leading to a cultural phenomenon. Let me explain. We can draw a line in the sand between the zombie of the past and the zombie we know now. And that line in the sand has a name. I Am Legend. No, not the movie. Alright, there we go, much better. Richard Matheson's 1954 masterpiece was a novel unlike anything that came before. The themes of the tale were profound, dealing with ideas of the complete destruction and upheaval of human society, and what the future has in store for those who replace them. It was an apocalypse story, one where a lone man tries to survive in a world where a pandemic has wiped out the population, leaving the remnants transformed into horrific monsters. They were these nocturnal, pale-skinned, blood-sucking creatures that look exactly like humans. Wait. You know, this is starting to sound dangerously close to vampires. No, really, I'm serious. The monsters in I Am Legend are vampires. No. Please sit down. I don't leave. I can explain everything. Yes, vampires. The revolutionary work of fiction that brought about our modern concept of the zombie apocalypse was about vampires. Go figure.
Peter, wake up.
But I mean, don't take my word for it. If you do enough digging around about the history of zombies, you'll soon find that all roads lead to I Am Legend. Discounting the relatively unsuccessful film adaptation of the novel, that's The Last Man on Earth from 1964, the other most direct path to a seminal work of fiction for zombies would be George A. Romero's Night of the Living Dead in 1968. That's the first time we encounter a similar premise on the silver screen. After all, it's the most obvious answer to our previous question about where the modern zombie came from. It's a well-documented fact that Romero based his film on Madison's novel.
I guess the original idea for Night of the Living Dead was basically inspired by a novel, a Richard Matheson novel called I Am Legend. Richard actually jokes with me about saying that I stole his idea. And I keep saying, no, my guys aren't vampires. They certainly aren't vampires. They're not even zombies. Zombies, to me, were, those boys in the Caribbean who, do the wet work for Lugosi. And I thought I was creating a completely new monster. The neighbors suddenly turned into flesh eaters, ghouls, and that's what I called them, ghouls, in the film.
It's worth mentioning that Madison wasn't all too impressed with Romero's interpretation of his story, but that didn't stop it from becoming a cultural phenomenon. This movie practically single-handedly made this new type of zombie all the rage, given the exact same concept of apocalypse a la Undead, where the monsters prowl the streets in search of their next victim. The similarities are clear, and this propelled the zombie into our cultural consciousness, or I suppose into our brains, which is what the zombies would have wanted. About I Am Legend itself. It's quite the entertaining story, and I think it's well worth the read for yourself. But, just in case, for all the rest who aren't in the reading mood, let's take a look at the novel story, shall we? And yes, spoilers, obviously. But, this book has been out for, over 50 years. I Am Legend follows the tale of Robert Neville, likely the last remaining human survivor of the vampire apocalypse in 1976's Los Angeles. He survives by only risking being outside in the daytime for supplies, as well as raiding their dens and staking them. Remember, vampires. Each night, the horde of vampires hound him and call out to him from beyond his barricaded home, attempting to lure him outside. With the women, the lustful, bloodthirsty, naked women, flaunting their hot bodies that wait seriously. Okay then. Neville is both depressive and an alcoholic, struggling to deal with his present circumstances and his past trauma of losing his daughter to the disease, and being forced to stake his own wife after she became a vampire. He is obsessed with seeking the truth about the disease, where did it come from, and more importantly, whether it can be cured. His research efforts lead him to suspect a bacteria that affects both living and dead hosts, as the bacteria are sensitive to garlic and sunlight. He even finds a dog one day and adopts it after much effort to gain its trust. Turns out the dog was sick and it dies soon after. Shit's rough for Neville. As he learns more about the vampires and their biology, he eventually makes a startling discovery. There are two kinds of vampires. Turns out some vampires are fully conscious sapient beings, basically just humans suffering from an ever-worsening vampiric condition. The other kind are literally the undead, humans that died from the disease and rose from the dead in a deranged state. One day, a few years later, Neville's spending the day outside, relaxing. Which is to say, he was staking vampires in their den, which at this point is basically his new pastime. When he encounters a woman in broad daylight. As you might expect, he's ecstatic, but immediately grows anxious when she, get this, recoils from garlic, but she gives excuses for her reaction, and this prompts Neville to share his theories on the contagion with her. Long story short, the woman calls herself Ruth, who now lives with Neville, and they share a romantic relationship. She eventually agrees to Neville's suggestion to find out whether she's infected once and for all with a blood test. After the blood sample is taken, however, she knocks him unconscious and views the results for herself. Neville awakes to find a note left by her, who admits to being a vampire spy, and reveals that Neville had murdered her husband, another vampire, in one of his relaxing hobby outings. The note also implies that the undead vampires are the only ones who are pathologically violent, as we discussed earlier. Apparently, the living vampires are learning to overcome their disease, even developing medicine to ease the vampiric symptoms, and this is allowing them to re-establish some form of new society. She confesses her love for him and begs him to not leave the city for fear of righteous retribution from her people. Neville, being naive, he believes that the living vampires would treat him with respect, even after his mass murders, and he gets startled one night by a crowd of them brutally slaying undead counterparts outside his base. And, of course, he freaks out, and suddenly fearing that they would turn on him next, he pulls out a gun and opens fire, and is subsequently mortally wounded and subdued. Now, a dying prisoner in a cell, Ruth appears to him in private and is apparently possessing high status in this new vampiric society. She bears him no ill will, but admits that his impending public execution is mostly justified. Showing mercy, however, she offers him a way out, suicide pills, and Neville agrees to them. As she leaves, he gets Ruth to promise not to allow this new society to become overtly ruthless. Looking outside his prison window, he comes face first with a vampire crowd all gathered outside, all staring at him in fear and disgust. Here, he is hit with a sudden realization. To them, he was some terrible scourge they had never seen, a scourge even worse than the disease they had come to live with. He was an invisible specter who had left for evidence of his existence the bloodless bodies of their loved ones, and he understood what they felt and did not hate them. Swallowing the pills and awaiting his death, Neville concludes that this act will form a superstition amongst the new people of the earth, thinking to himself, I am legend. Thanks for joining me on this journey through the origin of the modern zombie. And the next time the topic rears its rotten head in conversation, you'll have a hell of a story to tell, tracing their history from the US exploitation of voodoo and alternative undead stories to a little book that made the zombie a legend. Hang on a minute. I Am Legend had vampires in it, whereas in the Night of the Living Dead, the characters called the undead ghouls, not zombies. So the quintessential zombie novel and zombie film don't even use the word zombie? Then what was the point of writing this whole damn script?